tell now. Let the words be yours. I'm done with mine.
Grateful Dead, written by Bob Weir and John Perry Barlow. Cassidy, song named for Cassidy Law, born 1970, the daughter of Grateful Dead crew member Rex Jackson and Weir's former housemate Ellen Law, and also named for Neal Cassady, the Beat Generation writer, friend of Kerouac, friend of Ginsberg, friend pretty much of everyone, and the driver of the bus Further, Further tour and all that stuff, and the joke of spelling the word further with the letter U and all that. That bus was driven by Neal Cassady. By the way, if you like this stuff, there's an absolutely luminous book by Tom Wolfe called The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, where all of these various different tales and legends and history are told. Lyrics to that song so beautiful, I cannot resist reading at least some of them. The lyricist again, Barlow. I have seen where the wolf has slept by the silver stream. I can tell by the mark he left, you were in his dream. Ah, child of countless trees, child of boundless seas, what you are and what you're meant to be speaks his name, though you were born to me. Born to me, Cassidy. I suspect, by the way, that the speaks his name is a reference to Neal, who we will now hear about. Lost now on the country miles in his Cadillac. I can tell by the way you smile, he's rolling back. Come wash the nighttime clean, come grow the scorched ground green. Blow the horn and tap the tambourine, close the gap of the dark years in between you and me, Cassidy. Quick beats in an icy heart, catch colt draws a coffin cart. There he goes, and now here she starts. Hear her cry. Flight of the seabirds, scattered like lost words, wheeled to the storm and fly. Fare thee well now. Let your life proceed by its own design. And nothing to tell now. Let the words be yours. I'm done with mine. Fare thee well now. Let your life proceed by its own design. Nothing to tell now. Let the words be yours. I'm done with mine. Flight of the seabirds, scattered like lost words, wheeled to the storm and fly. This from the album Reckoning, also called For the Faithful, shows that the Warfield and Radio City in 1980, pretty much the first run for Brent Midland, who's the longest standing keyboard player for the Grateful Dead. Flight of the seabirds, scattered like lost words. Wheeled to the storm and fly. I had been into the Dead for about maybe 2 or 3 years when I got a hold of the Reckoning album, where all the songs from tonight's show are from, and I couldn't believe how beautiful that song was. I just kept playing it over and over again, thinking this is basically the meaning of music, and particularly those lines. Barlow, what a great writer. Most of the song's words were written by Robert Hunter, but Barlow wrote a good 20, 25 songs, and some of the most memorable. Rancher and founder of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and passed away, I believe, in 2018. So, this is amazingly, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but the 30th anniversary of starting the Planet Waves horoscope column is upon me. And, if I'm trying to envision going back to that afternoon, that evening in Rosendale, New York, where I wrote this column, and then imagining that I might be just still working on it 30 years later. I mean, I work on the horoscope every day, pretty much. It's it's the first thing I write every day. It's a month of one of the signs, maybe a month of two of the signs. I've learned to spread it out, and my technique has evolved over the years. But you wonder how anybody gets into this, and I will tell you that the horoscope was a very different thing when it was in newspapers. It's almost been rendered irrelevant by the internet, where there is kind of everything in a profuse abundance, except I don't really see horoscopes. I mean, if you know of anybody writing a 12-sign horoscope, send them. I get one. I forget who writes it. It's so sad. It's like 20 words, and they don't really say anything. When it was in the newspaper, there was a real mystique about it. I mean, reading a newspaper is a whole different experience than reading the internet. And many young people have never read a newspaper. It's just not something they've ever done. I don't know what they think when they walk past the newspapers at 7-Eleven or the Stewart's or whatever, Quick Check or wherever. What do they think they're for? Like, can you tell? Does all the ink come off? Why would you spend $3 on this thing when you can just kind of get it for free on the internet? I don't know what people think. But there's not a lot of newspapers left, and not a lot of people read them. And so the horoscope is set today for whatever horoscopes remain in a completely different milieu. It is no longer dominantly a print phenomenon. The horoscope that I read every day, and it's pretty much all the astrology that I read, is the Sally Brompton horoscope in the New York Post, which is the horoscope column I started reading in the early 1990s. And Sally is the successor to a man named Patrick Walker, who was originally, he went under he took over the column of someone who went under the pen name Celeste. I don't know offhand who that was. I've read about it, but he took over Celeste's column after much training and practice, and then wrote the Patrick Walker horoscope anonymously for many years until he revealed his name and became the most popular horoscope writer in the history of astrology. I mean, the estimates are still there are still estimates that he had 1 billion readers. Now, I find that hard to believe, 1,000 million readers. That's a lot of copies of a newspaper. It was in many, many, many newspapers. But if the estimates are at 1 billion, we can assume at least in the hundreds of millions, and there was nothing like it. Now, I never ever would have foreseen myself becoming an astrologer. I just didn't. I was a serious news journalist. I like to write satire. I thought I would be a fiction writer. I was very good at kind of something of an essayist, but I was lured into environmental investigative journalism, quite directly by putting my feet on the ground at this place called Love Canal, and I still work on that story. I did that in 1983, but it was when I first started working for a professional newspaper out after university. I edited different campus publications and loved doing that, and still miss doing it. Campus publications are the best. They were anyway when they existed. And I got a job working for a newspaper in Warren, New Jersey called the Echoes Sentinel, part of a publishing group called Recorder Publishing, now called the Central New Jersey Hills Publishing Group, refounded as a nonprofit. There were about 7 or 8 newspapers, and I got hired at one of the flagship papers, the Echoes Sentinel, covering the township of Warren. And the editor of that newspaper was an astrologer. And up to that point, I didn't really know anything about astrology at all. I mean, not even vaguely. My anthropology teacher, Professor David Banks, once said that all astrologers go crazy. That was his observation as an anthropologist, though he did know some astrology. And then living in the spiritual community I was living in at the time, Miracle Manor in Piscataway, New Jersey, there was one person there who knew astrology. Dave Chrismond, and he was friends with my girlfriend, and they would stay up late at night talking astrology. I just wasn't interested. And Flo was a professional astrologer. She had a bookstore called Aquarius Rising Books in Fairhaven, New Jersey, down by the shore. And while there was no astrology ever once in any Recorder Publishing Company newspaper, no columns, nothing, it was way too serious for that. There was a lot of astrology in the company, thanks to Flo, who had the constant flow of astrological information and mild terrorism, warning us about all the things that were going to go on and reading our charts. She had to have read the chart of everybody within 50 miles of the office. I'm sure all the politicians, she just basically cast everybody's chart. But she didn't make a very appealing pitch for astrology. She was kind of old school and a little bit simplistic and a little bit blunt, and was similar as an editor. But I learned a heck of a lot of journalism from Flo Higgins, and really made my chops. As a working journalist, which is somewhat different than being a student journalist. You get to try a lot of things as a student journalist, but as a working journalist, you're basically given a beat, or that's how you were done. It was done then, and my beat was Warren, so I had to write about Warren galore, endlessly, like 5 times a week for the year that I worked at the Echo Sentinel. The sewage authority and the town board and the planning board and the police and everything. So anyway, we're all 3 writers and Flo are in the office, and Flo is whipping us with astrology all the time. Saturn square the sun. That means you got to work harder. I mean, we were writing 80 inches of copy a week, 80 column inches of copy a week. I mean, that's a lot of copy. But Flo was, a hardcore New Ager, basically. From the age when when astrology was a quote-unquote New Age thing. It goes back, obviously, to ancient Greece and Sumeria and ancient India, but it kind of became a pet canary of the New Age for a while. And Flo had a bookstore in Fairhaven, and I went down there to visit, and got my chart read, and I, wasn't that really impressed, and also got my tarot cards read. That was pretty intense, and I got into tarot cards. So I bought my first deck of tarot cards from Flo, and became a pretty good tarot card reader. And in addition to that, and I was deep into A Course in Miracles in that era of my life, and I learned how to read runes, Viking runes. I had the Book of Runes by Ralph Blum, and I realized that these methods work. I mean, these methods get interesting results. And I, being philosophically and spiritually inclined, was curious as to why, and considered why, and started reading. But astrology I could never see the point. It always just seemed overly complicated and full of all this jargon, and I just didn't get it. And it was entirely the way that it was presented to me. Until one day, someone knew that I liked to read tarot cards. I was deep into my work as an investigative reporter. And I wish I knew who this was. They said, you really ought to check out the New York Post horoscope. I'm like, all right. So I went out and bought it. The Post was a quarter. And I got the horoscope, and this is pretty good. This is pretty good writing, first of all, right? That's the first thing with writing. Like, is it good writing? But then it was really on point. I mean, I was impressed because if it's not valid, it shouldn't work at all. I mean, what you read in that column, in a 12-sign column, should be totally meaningless. It should have no bearing at all on your life if it doesn't work. And the thing was, it was very frequently speaking to the specific situations of my life. I mean, weird stuff. Like once I had an astrology client. I was already, this is a little bit further in. I had an astrology client who was a little bit flaky, but she claimed to have permission to go to the Vatican go to the Vatican Library and look at tarot cards. The Vatican has this incredible collection of tarot cards in the Vatican Library. I wouldn't be surprised if this is true. But she had been flaky on other kinds of plans, so I couldn't really count on her. She'd be like, oh, hi, let's go, let's do this. Then it wouldn't happen. Oh, let's do this. This is going to be, and then it wouldn't happen. Then I go over one evening and she's like, we're going to go to the Vatican and read cards, and I'm going to pay for the. Okay, so I'm driving home from there, and I go stop at Stewart's Shops, our very nice convenience store. I pick up the New York Post, and I flip it over to the horoscope. Pisces. You're obsessed with some kind of international travel, but don't put your faith in someone who has let you down several times before. And I'm thinking, there's no way that anyone should be able to write that. Considering I was coming right from the house of someone who was planning to take me to the vet, and I'd never been to Europe, I'd never traveled outside of North America, I'd been to Canada. So it was a series of events like that just completely floored me. Once I was in the middle of the PCB article. SUNY New Paltz contaminated by these toxic chemicals called PCBs, and through a series of connections through the Jewish mafia, of which I am some kind of a non-Jewish member, somebody got me connected with a New York Times writer named Mike Weinreb. And I read the horoscope that day. I was interviewed. They interviewed me. The story was ready to go. But when the first time you're in the New York Times, you never believe you're going to get in the New York Times. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of these things like, yeah, right, I'll believe that when I see it. So I flip open the Post. Pisces. What happens next will more than compensate for past defeats and disappointments, period. End of horoscope. The phone rings. It's Mike Weinreb. You're in the newspaper on Sunday. All right? It's going to change your life. All right, gotta go. See you later. Click, and he moves on. Whew. Wow, what happens next? Talk about what happens next. So this just kept happening. It was happening in large ways. It was happening in small ways. And every time I'm thinking, this is impossible. This can't, someone in England or Greece, I found out Patrick lived in Lindos, and then he would live in London. He would switch back and, commute back and forth. Not bad, London and Lindos on roads. Randomly writing these things, sitting on the beach in pencil on yellow pad. There's no way this should work. It just shouldn't work. It can't work. It's perfectly impossible, but the problem was it was working. And the other part was that Patrick's voice, his writing voice, was so beautiful. It was just such a rich, loving, friendly writing voice. The way he spoke to his readers, intelligently and always advocating for them. And so I started to pick up that his horoscope column was a form of advocacy journalism. I thought that was very appealing. And, I don't had ever once read a horoscope column before that. Like, why read them? They're totally stupid. They're ridiculous. It's just a stupid concept, except that here I am reading the Patrick Walker horoscope every day thinking, how is this possible? I don't get it. It should not work at all. Finally, one day on my birthday in 1994, I couldn't stand it anymore. I was involved in a federal lawsuit against the state of New York. They tried to throw me off the SUNY New Paltz campus for being a misbehaved person, when what they really were upset was that I followed the college president across the campus with a video crew trying to get an answer for why she had 1,000 students living in contaminated dormitories. And they said that I was a badly behaved person when the videotape, which they seemed to omit the fact, they missed the fact that there was a guy with a video camera following me. And I was my big bushy black hair, big bushy black beard, and wearing Birkenstocks and white short, like long baggy white shorts and a white shirt, looking like, Mr. Rastaman with a smile on, a little gleam in my eye, looking like kind of a young Jerry Garcia, and asking them, hey, did you test events in Cage Hall? Did you test events in Capen Hall? And they're like, no, I want to answer the question because I hadn't tested the vents. And then they voted, they had a meeting and they threw me off the campus. I brought a federal lawsuit. And as it turned out, that on my birthday in 1994, I was deposing a whole bunch of, my attorney and I were deposing a bunch of administrators on the campus, asking them questions like, did you test the vents for contamination before you put the students back in there? So I literally walked off the campus. At this point, I'm like, I gotta figure this out. And I knew from knowing Flo Higgins that I needed to have this thing called an ephemeris. And I wonder how many astrologers even have one, particularly young. All the old ones have one. It's the Bible. It's the thing you have. It's the book that tells you where the planets are going to be. That's how you cast a chart. That's how you read transits. That's how you do progressions. Okay, so I walked from the president's office at SUNY New Paltz, where we were conducting these depositions in the president's conference room, strolled across the campus, walked 2 blocks off campus to Esoterica Books on Main Street, and proceeded to buy the Rosicrucian Ephemeris, which probably cost as much money as I had at the time, probably like $20. I bet I had like $1 left for gas. I buy the Rosicrucian Ephemeris, and I start to read the horoscope column, only reading the ephemeris now, trying to see what he's saying. With Venus crossing the dynamic 5th house of your solar chart. And so, Venus enters Leo. Oh, for Aries, I see. Okay. So, and then every day I would work on these investigative stories. I was working on a big dioxin piece at that point on the fundamental fraud behind the claim that dioxin is good for you. I was doing an article on the Zach Gaffey study, and the EPA administrator, William Sanjor. I promised to do a segment on the Sanjor memo. The Sanjor memo needs to be read on the air somewhere, sometime. And Kate Jenkins, these EPA heroes who were exposing this dioxin fraud, and I'm deep in the middle of this story, and I'm like, okay, I had done enough of that for the day. I was hanging out in my girlfriend Hillary's room at her mom's house in Woodstock with the kid, Zaya. And every night she would go steal some weed from her mother's tray, which I assume her mother knew. She would steal some weed from her mother's tray. She'd light a joint, and I would sit there on her bed, on the futon, on the floor, studying the ephemeris, the Patrick Walker horoscope column, and a deck of Crowley tarot cards, which I was aware had astrological markings on them. They had like indications of astrology signs. All the Crowley deck and the Handel deck, which is much better for you than the Crowley deck, Haindl. It's one of about 4 decks, maybe 5 decks I can recommend wholeheartedly. So the Crowley deck has astrology markings on it, symbols on it, and I was using it to kind of put the whole thing together. And it's like really fun, actually, quite beautiful to be doing this work. It's intriguing, it's mysterious, it's relevant, I'm trying to figure out how Patrick is coming up with these interpretations. How's he doing it? And I think I learned more astrology from that exercise than I have ever learned since, because it taught me the basic fundamentals of, even though it was a 50-word per sign column, signs, houses, and planets. How you put it together to come up with an interpretation. That's where the rubber meets the road. If you're an astrologer, you have to look at you have to interpret. If you can't interpret, what good are you? You sit there yourself and pack all the information into your head. No, you've got to eventually say, well, here's what I think. So I'm figuring out the language for this and how he does this, and then this went on. That was I bought the ephemeris on my birthday in March of 1994. And then the chart I'm looking at is for April 13th, 1995, when one day, on a lark, I thought, well, why don't I try this? I can do this. I kind of want to be an astrologer. Maybe if I write a column, I'll get clients. Oh, well. So I sat down on my Mac 2CX, and I should see if I can recover that off the disk drive. I don't really have it's somewhere. Eventually it'll turn up. And I sat down and I wrote 2 columns. I wrote bi-weekly. There was a paper I was aiming for in Poughkeepsie, New York, called Free Time. I knew they came out every 2 weeks. So I wrote one for the May 1st, 95 edition and the May 15th, 95 edition. And that was on Thursday, April 13th. And Friday, the 14th, I called up this guy, Steve, and he answered the phone. I guess his girlfriend, Jessica, answered the phone. And I said, look, I wrote a couple of horoscope columns. Are you interested? I don't need any money. Just pay me in advertising. Well, that's the deal you're always looking for when you're running a small community paper. You don't want to write any checks if you're running a small community paper. You want to cheat on the water bill if you can, because there's next to no money. So they were happy to put me in the paper and give me advertising. And I wrote that column for quite a while in that paper. And there I was doing it. I was actually riding the bicycle, the last thing I expected. And right around that time, this is the winter of 94, 95. I was deep into studying astrology. I was no longer with my Woodstock girlfriend. I was living alone in an apartment in the woods in Rosendale, New York, with my kitty cats, William Penn, Rumpelteazer, Wildcat, and Ling Ling, Rococo, St. Francis. These 2 Maine Coon cats who I absolutely love to this day. Maine Coons, man, they are great kitty cats. And it was the 3 of us living there, and at some point I get a job working for the Jackie Stallone Psychic Circle. So the way that happened was, at some point I was nearing the end of I knew I had it, I had to shift the energy on this whole investigative reporting thing, and I wind up, my kind of last job in that is I ended up working for this lawyer who had been disbarred, and she was calling out judicial corruption. So I got this writing job of having to write and design a full-page ad for the op-ed page. Well, no, not full page, like a kind of 8x10 ad for the op-ed page. In the New York Times, I used to sell ads on the op-ed page. And I was working for this family, the Sassours, in Westchester, and I was a little fed up with it, and I was leafing through the Village Voice, and it said, tarot readers wanted. So I applied for a job with this psychic hotline. It turned out to be a psychic hotline. And I got the job. I passed a test reading. This guy, Virgil Curry, hired me, Pisces, and I logged in. I knew they were charging these people $4 a minute, a godly sum of money in 1994. I mean, imagine that. It's a lot of money today. Imagine in 1994 dollars, that's like $10 a minute. And I was off-put by the fact that it cost that much. And I did a couple of calls and then would log out of the system. You'd log in with your touch-tone phone, then you'd log back out. And then soon after that, it occurred to me, well, these people are going to be paying $10 a minute, $4 at the time, $4 a minute, whether I'm reading their cards or somebody worse than me is reading their cards. So I'm going to do it. So I logged in again, And I got a bunch of calls, and in the morning I picked up the phone and I called the company. Virgil didn't hire me. Somebody else hired me. And they put me through to the top guy, Virgil Curry. One of my MOs is always talk to the top guy. Yeah, have respect for the rank and file and the vice presidents and the intermediary functionaries, but when you want to get something done, call the boss. And Virgil and I hit it off. We just hit it like two Tasmanian devils, only in Pisces style. Virgil says, all right, look, listen. I need people to work the night shift. If you work the night shift, which is basically like 10 p.m. Eastern time to like 4 a.m. Eastern time, I'll bump you up to priority 1. You'll get lots of calls. You'll make money. And there you go. You work the night shift. You're getting a promotion. First day on the job. So I'm like, sounds good to me. And Virgil really liked me. He's gone now. I love this guy so much. He was so sweet and so straightforward and so real about the work. And it was a really good company. And I was making, I think, out of that $4, I think I might have been making 35 or 40 cents. A paltry commission, 10% commission on these calls, with the company making 90% of the money. I was still managing to make more money than I have ever made, like $400 a week, just staying up for 5 or 6 hours at night reading tarot cards. And around that same time, this is long before I wrote the horoscope column, months and months before, I called up this guy Dave Rell, who ran this thing called the Astrology Center of Southern California. He had an 800 number, had a bookstore. It was a bookstore. He cast charts for $5. $5. Cast in 1994. So I bought a lot of charts. I've got a whole book of the charts I got from Dave Rell. I cast kind of as many charts then as I do now. Only it was $5 a throw. And Dave and I became friends. I was started as a good customer, spending my money from the psychic hotline, buying books and materials to learn astrology. And Dave realized I wanted to learn. So every night before I logged into the psychic hotline, I would call Dave on his 800 number and get kind of an astrology lesson every night. This went on for months. And he basically gave me all the like brass tacks, down and dirty, this is how you do it. This is it. Let me explain this to you. And we went through technique after technique, and he warned me about all the bad people in the business, because he knew everybody, because he owned a bookstore. So he's dealing with all the publishers, all the authors. He had everybody's phone number. He would give me anybody's phone number I wanted, as long as I didn't say that it was him. So I started calling people up, and like famous astrologers, basically, and interviewing them, because that's what you do when you're a journalist. You just think everybody can be interviewed. You're walking down the street and you see the guys collecting trash, and you think, oh, let's interview the guys. And then you go into the coffee shop, and the barista's there, interview the barista, and then you go here, you go to City Hall, you talk to the city clerk, and then you're interviewing everybody. So my theory of astrology was, I'm just going to call these people up and see if they'll talk to me, and they all did. So this very lavish Mars retrograde winter, 94 into 95, I'm doing the psychic hotline. I've got Dave Rell whispering in my ear for an hour a night, telling me everything I need to do. I'm reading books from that I've purchased from Dave, and basically putting it all together. And then one day he said, "Great, you're ready. Go out and do readings." This is in the spring of 95. So the part of the concept of the horoscope was, well, I'm going to do readings, so I might as well just write a horoscope and reach out into the community and do it. And this goes on to the present day. I mean, literally this morning I wrote Leo for the month of May. And that is how I got started. And soon after, got into a book called Chronogram, and that was an even bigger book. And then Free Time eventually became closed and all that. But now I'm like established as the community's astrologer. And then I was in the middle of all of this. Somehow, I don't really know where I was posting my column, but America Online UK picked up my column. And they weren't paying me, but I was getting all these referrals for readings. And finally, eventually, I went to London and met with the managers of AOL UK. AOL was the big deal in the mid 1990s, and I said, "Look, pay me for my column." And I'm like, "All right," and they start paying me something like 200 quid, £100 a month or so. This is a lot of money for a writer. You're not used to getting paid anything, and plus I'm writing a horoscope. Plus I'm in England, so I start in Poughkeepsie, New York, and then almost immediately after, I'm in England, and the internet was not very big at that time. There were not a lot of astrology websites at that time. And so this focused a lot of attention on my column. I kind of got in at the right time. Just as print was becoming digital, I get in at just during that threshold when there were both jobs in print and in digital. There were still some print jobs left. There's a few, but easily only 1% of what existed. And it was not long before that that I, let's see, how did I meet Jonathan Caner, you ask? Because that was a major break for me to meet Jonathan. So the way that happened was on that trip to England, where I went to collect my money from AOL, successfully, I made the pilgrimage of all astrologers who go to London, which is to go to the astrology shop in Covent Garden and meet Robert Curry, the owner of the astrology shop. I mean, all astrologers who go to England would go pretty much on the first or the second day. You'd go to Covent Garden, it's a neighborhood in London, and you'd go to the astrology shop, this amazing astrology bookstore, and then you'd meet Robert and you'd introduce yourself, and I did that, and he had a petition out to save William Lilly's cottage. William Lilly, the author of the first astrology textbook in English. So, of course, I signed the petition with my email address. And by, it's now the winter of 1999, and one day an email comes floating in to an open copied email. Those were great. An open copied email to all the astrologers who had shown up at the astrology shop in Covent Garden and signed the petition. And one of them was Tia Leela 91 at AOL.com, Jonathan Caner. I knew who Jonathan Caner was. I thought he wrote a great column. He's like the most verbose and friendliest and unstuffiest astrologer in all of England. Sally's still better, but Patrick dies, you see. But I'm jumping around a little bit. So I get this email from Curry, and I've got Jonathan Caner's private email address, Tia Leela 91 at AOL. Isn't not a business address, but it's his email address. Actually, an email address he set up for his daughter, who was like 5, and used it. So I wrote to him, "Hey, Jonathan, love your column. I write a column too. Here it is." "Oh, very nice." We corresponded for a while, and he said, "Oh, if I'm in Florida, I'll drop in." And I said, "Oh, if I'm in the UK, I'll drop in." And we lost contact until about 3 years later. I get an email from this guy named Dave Nicholson, who is the editor who runs Jonathan Caner's website, who manages the horoscope. Daily horoscope, Caner writes, gets translated into, used to write 10, 11 languages. All of this has to be coordinated. It's a major job to do this. And the email's from Nicholson, Dave Nicholson. "Hi, Dave Nick here. I'm Dave Nicholson. Call me Dave Nick. I'm the editor of Jonathan Caner's website, and he wants to hire you to write the horoscope column. Pick a day." So I picked a day and wrote my first daily horoscope column. And they're paying me, I believe they were paying me £300 a day. So I get £300. This was pound was like $1.50, and the next day they write to me again, and he says, "Jonathan, loves your column. We want you to write the next one too." And at that time, he was rotating different writers by the day, but I got 2 bites of the apple. And then the next time Jonathan went on vacation, Dave Nick said, you're hired. We've gotten rid of everybody else. You're hired to do the entire vacation run of 1 week, and we're so impressed we're going to give you the Saturday rate every day. You got an extra 100 pounds for writing on Saturday. We're going to raise your rate to the Saturday rate every day. And now, like, I'm in business and in the Daily Mirror for like a week or 2 at a time. So that was my first experience writing a daily horoscope in London. Now, the difference between astrology in the U.S. and the U.K. is like, imagine like a cowboy in England, like, pippity pop. It's not gonna. You're gonna have a lasso like in York, Yorkshire. It's not. It doesn't work. There are no cowboys in England, and astrology is not really serious in the United States. But here I am, basically an American astrologer getting put into the Fleet Street Press. I mean, this is serious business. For an astrologer, I mean, this is the highest accolade you could possibly want as a horoscope writer, is to be standing in for the most popular writer in England as his vacation substitute, which is what I was. And then they're introducing me every day as Eric Francis, the eminent American astrologer. I'm like, I can't believe I'm reading this. I can't believe this is happening. So finally, Kaner, who jumped papers a number of times, strikes a better deal with the Daily Mail, and this is going to happen, right? It's going to go through. He's going to switch to the Daily Mail. But the Mirror sues him to keep him in the Mirror and honor his contract. They won't let him out of his contract. So he's writing in the Mirror. And I hadn't had a gig in a while. He hadn't gone on vacation in a while. And finally, I wrote to Dave Nick, and I said, I think I wrote right to Jonathan. And I said, hey, have you, what's up with the lawsuit? And, what's going on? And he writes back, he says, when can you get here? Jonathan Kaner wrote to me and said, when can you get here? I think it was a Sunday. I said, how about Thursday? He said, good. So I book a flight. I book a flight to, not Heathrow. It's the other one. The other one of the smaller London, not that much smaller. And I said, look, send a car to get me, please. I get off the plane, and I've got, suits like in a garment bag, because I realized, why did he want me to come? Well, he was about to jump. Had a month to jump to the Mirror, from the Mirror to the Mail, and he wanted me there. He wanted me there to get my job. In other words, he was planning to set me up as the astrologer in the Daily Mirror when he went over to the Daily Mail. So I hack my laptop, I bring all my stuff, I fly across the ocean, I land in London. He sends a limousine to pick me up at the airport. The limousine takes me to his apartment on Gouge Place, the Purple Palace, this fabulous apartment, the whole thing painted purple. And he says, well, I got to go back to York. You want to stay here or you want to come with me? I'm like, I'm going with you. So we get on the train. I'm riding in a first-class carriage from London to York. And I'm sitting there. This is really surreal. I mean, this is like going from being like a deadhead to sitting with Jerry Garcia getting guitar lessons. And Kaner never talked about astrology. That was the one thing you couldn't ever talk to him about. No. Baden verboten. But he would talk about the astrology business. And so I'm sitting there in this posh, cushy car with coffee and tea and crumpets being served on the way to his other place in York, this very old Roman town in England, and getting this like 2.5 hour, basically kind of very friendly lecture on how the astrology business works. Completely mind-blowing. And he says, look, I want you to go to the Mirror for an interview, but you can't go. You gotta be in the paper when you go in for the interview. Therefore, I'm going to take a quote unquote vacation for the next 2 weeks, and you're going to write my column, which he's paying me for at the Saturday rate, 6 days a week. You're going to write my column. I'm going to be away somewhere, which that turned out to be his office, nowhere, and I'm writing the column every day. I get my interview in the Mirror with the features editor. I think I get the guy's name. Something. And Piers Morgan was the editor-in-chief. And right before I go in for the interview, like 2 days before I go in for the interview, I'm staying with Tracy Delaney and Jonathan Cannon. Tracy Delaney, owner of Serenu.com. So she comes down from wherever she is, Wales or something. And we're camping out in Jonathan Caner's Purple Palace, and we're like waiting for this opportunity to go into the Daily Mirror. And one of these nights, I have this dream that four or five of the top stories in the Daily Mirror are going to be about the Daily Mirror, and then all of a sudden the Daily Mirror is like in all kinds of stuff. Piers Morgan's in trouble for getting involved in anti-war activities, and then there's other scandals, and when I finally get the call, I somehow get an interview. With Pete Willis. He was the features editor. So Tracy and I, take the tube or cab, probably more likely, and we go to Canary Wharf, this super she business banking district where the Daily Mirror, Trinity Mirror Corporation's offices were, and we're escorted into the newsroom. It's a big deal all by itself. And we look, and there's a whiteboard up above head level that lists the top 10 stories of the day. And 4 of them involve the Daily Mirror. That is right. 4 of the top 10 news items of that day in the Daily Mirror involve the Daily Mirror. And Tracy knew about the stream, and we were just looking at each other like, what the ever-loving fuck is going on here? So I came close to getting that job. The Brits are very Brit-centric, and no, they hired someone who claimed to be, yes, Princess Diana's astrologer. Princess Diana killed in a car crash during a solar eclipse in Virgo on her Pluto. And I'm thinking, if I was Princess Diana's astrologer, I wouldn't tell anyone because they'd say, well, why didn't you warn her? And she consulted with this person, allegedly, consulted with them, left the office crying and all of that stuff. Well, just stay home or something. No, she bragged and claimed to be Diana's astrologer. Wow, that's a great reference. Diana in her grave. So, but then I didn't get the job. But then Caner kept me on as his vacation stand-in for years, as his vacation stand-in. So that's basically the story of how I got into horoscope writing. And along the way, I found Planet Waves, and all this happens. Planet Waves, founded in 1998, incorporates in, we went to a pay service I think in 2003, and then we incorporate in 2004, and the rest is history. As for Patrick, he got me to the point where I could write the column. Right, that reading him every day, the best astrology lesson I ever had, infused with a lot of, concentrated information from Dave Rell of the Astrology Center of America. You couldn't want somebody better. I got into the business, and then about 6 months after I started my column, Patrick dies. And we're told, it was said to be pneumonia, but it was really supposed to be AIDS, but this was in the era when they were killing all the gay men with AZT. So he was killed by, because there's no HIV virus, the only thing that could kill you is the treatments can kill you. So he was, I believe, in AZT. Victim passes away in October of 1995, and someone no one had ever heard of named Sally Brompton took over the column. Sally, because I knew all this from Jonathan, who told me everything I needed to know about the business. Sally, along with a guy named Pete Watson, wrote the 1-900 number scripts that were supposed to be the Patrick Walker 1-900 numbers. So two really good astrologers, Watson's great, Sally's fantastic, wrote these scripts, and then this actor would pretend to be Patrick Walker, reading the scripts. Patrick never read a script. He never wrote a script. This was done by other people, and they were pretty good. I called a few times. So Sally gets tapped to be the successor to Patrick, and I got to know Sally. I communicated with her for maybe 10 years, who once said, "You leave Jonathan Caner in the shade." I'm like, oh, that's a high reference. I'm not going to tell him you said that. But thank you. Compliment taken. And that is it. I miss Patrick dearly. I think about him every day. His spirit is with me, and I know I write the only column that even comes close. Now, Patrick was writing 50 words a day. My dailies were 100. Well, daily news 50. Jonathan's had a longer length, 111 words approximately. And I'm writing in a longer format and, mostly writing weekly and monthly. But I learned how to speak in that horoscope voice from Patrick. Now, of course, after time, I'm doing it completely my own way. But, I know from Patrick that ultimately the bottom line is the horoscope is advocacy journalism. You're here to advocate for and to inform your readers of things they wouldn't know otherwise. And you must be trustworthy so that they believe what you say, that they take your word for it, and you never lead them astray or turn people against themselves. And the horoscope remains this incredible thing that is now a dying art. It's a dying art. The almanacs no longer exist. The magazines and the books are going away, and the younger astrologers have all learned. They've all learned on the internet, and so there you go. That is how I got into and remain active as a horoscope writer. Again, the 30-year anniversary, 10:49 p.m. when I finished the second column. That's when I cast the chart. April 13th, 1995. Scorpio rising. I'm sure that's shocking. Libra moon. And Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries. Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries, sitting right on my Jupiter in Aries, and as we are having right now, a conjunction of Venus and Saturn in Pisces right on my Sun. I'm going to cast this chart again in modern form and include it with the program tonight. And that's it. I want to thank you for, those of you who pay for the horoscope basically pay for everything, and you get everything else with the horoscope. One of the innovations that I brought to the horoscope is it always comes with an article. That started in Chronogram, and I developed this format that was lead article plus horoscope, because you've got to have a form outside the 12-sign format to just say what's going on in some context, to describe the astrology in much more contextual for the world itself, and not the person's private scenario, their personal private situation. And that's it. PW, Planet Waves. It happens to have the same number of letters as Patrick Walker. I didn't plan that. It just does. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, so this next piece of music is it's an old Irish ballad. And this is, I'm going to suggest an exercise in deep listening, because Brent Midland, the brand new keyboard player, who plays piano in these, he's not playing, so he played many types of keyboards. Jerry wanted a keyboard player, not a piano player, but the keyboard player happens to be a damn good piano player. And though the piano is low in the mix, can't really do anything about that. Now it's a live recording from like 80, 30, God knows how many, 40 what? 45 years ago? God, that can't be possible. you can still hear it. And so I suggest listening once or twice, and instead of listening to the words and the fabulous guitar playing, listen to that snazzy piano line played by the one, the only, Brett Midland. This is from For the Faithful Reckoning, Rosalie McFall.
Out on the lonely hills, in a cabin lonesome, lived the sweetest rose of color, mine Rosalie McFall. Her hair was bright as pearl, and her voice was sweet to me. That I always loved, and I hope that you love me. Asked her to be my darling, and this is what you see. Know that I'm gonna be happy when you and I. Then God way up in heaven one day for her to call. I lost my pride, oh hard love, my Rosalie McFall. I searched the wide world, cities great and small, but I never found enough like my Rosalie. Out on the lonely hills, in a cabin lonesome, live the sweet